Продовжуємо роботу в українському
We continue our work in UCMC. Our next topic is open KGB archives, Eastern Partnership experts about the Ukrainian reform experience. Our speakers are Igor, Cașu, Doctor of Historical Sciences, the Director of Moldova representative at the platform of European Memory and Conscience Moldova, Dmytro Drozd, former political critic, Samvel, Martirosyan, information security specialist, Irakli, Khvadagiani, employee of the Georgian research laboratory SovLab, Rafik Ramazanov, security service of Azerbaijan, Ihor, Rozkladay, chief expert and group manager, the Reanimation package of reforms, national memory policy, lawyer at the Center for Democracy and Rule of Law, CEDEM. Good afternoon. We will be speaking Russian. We will be talking about Ukrainian experience in the context of the communization of opening KGB archives, and not only about this. 2 years ago, Ukraine did what had seemed impossible. It was the decommunization set of laws passed. 4 laws were passed, and it was criticized by the Western European politicians. For example, responsibility, some provisions about propaganda of totalitarian bodies, and the protection of Ukrainian Patriotic Army, which in some neighboring countries are believed guilty for the events happening in 1940s, 1950s. The archives law, which was developed by me also as a co-author, starting from 1993. I tried to reform something in this sphere. Very many laws were adopted in information and media spheres, and the archive law was it was adopted in 1993 to give the opportunity to people to seek for information. In principle, after that, the legislation almost has not changed. The new law was based in particular on the ideas and recommendations of 2000 access to archive documents and other documents should be based on the principles of access to information. In 2011, Ukraine adopted the law on access to information, public access, and it helped much, and we adapted it to the archive sphere and opened KGB archives. We learned the best practices of Czechia and other countries. We saw pros and cons in their legislations and understanding there's trends to hide something behind personal details by officials. We decided to open everything. There were very intensive debates because we understood that some sensitive information could become open, but understanding the balance, the number of people who survived, we decided to open everything except where some victim is present. They can close access. This victim should said what information should be classified, and the classification is possible for 25 years till the end of the life. specifically of this victim. For example, such the law is working. Ordinary people went to archives and found information about their grandfathers and great-grandfathers. Many of them were shocked because the knowledge in the family was very small. For example, I have not managed to find something about my ancestors. Maybe something is available in Moscow, but it is not possible to get information from Moscow. There are questions how to create archives at the institutions. There are very many, but the institutions are not established. There are very many practical issues, challenges, but our experience demonstrated that this is very important. Without this, we are entrapped in the Soviet paradigm of myths. What you see, what should happen in your countries so that you can implement our best practices in your countries? What should happen in your countries? How could you do this? How can you do this in parts, step by step, to eat the elephant by portions? In Armenia, we have quite different situation. Decommunization issues have not been on the agenda because we have not had any Lenin monuments since 1991. The communists left us, and our society did not have the question of decommunization. The KGB 1 year before independence of Armenia, the KGB of Armenia said that they are on the side of the National Party. So, respectively, there are some political forces which raise the issue of opening archives, but the society demonstrate quite different trends. Some people say that this is rather late, no problems will be resolved. In the first years of independence, we experienced the war, and it was a risk to open archives. Then national security could have been compromised. Nobody wanted to intensify hostilities, and Armenia, in contrast to Ukraine or Georgia, thought that we are successors of Soviet state. The problem about occupation was not on the top of political discourse, talking historically, starting from 1992. Once in 2 or 3 years in the parliament, some forces tried to push forward the illustration law, but we have in our country both the existing power and the opposition are against illustration, because Armenia is a small country and everyone knows everyone, and this could cause problems. So opening of agents, disclosure of agents' names is risky. For historians, politologists, analysts, it is important to know some segments of archives, but here we see problems that KGB opened some information about repressed persons repressed during Stalin's reign, and there are many questions concerning understanding of Soviet history. What about the prospects? Prospects in theory are present, but in practice these issues are not raised in the society intensively. For me and my colleagues from Armenia, this fact that we gather here, my colleagues are now detailing the archives of the repressed persons. This is the message to open the archives, because there are some forces which try not to open this information. The thing is that in Belarus we didn't have Lenin monument falls, new Lenin monuments appear, a new monument appeared last year. Well, we can survive Lenin, but we have new monuments to Stalin, which not everyone knows. In near Minsk there is a museum, the line of Stalin. This is a historical name, but also the bust to Stalin has been erected there, and the monument to Dzerzhinsky has been erected in the School of Militia, and one another Stalin monument is in one town of Belarus, and there are streets after Stalin, 3 or 4 streets. In these circumstances, our Minister of Internal Affairs goes to the events in the NKVD uniforms. Lukashenko recommends to introduce Stalin's methods of management. So talking about opening archives in these circumstances is nonsense. The only thing we can dream about that the cases of those repressed persons would be open, of those who were repressed in 1930s. Those persons have been rehabilitated, and private life starts from the end of life of those persons. Archives of KGB and the Ministry of Internal Affairs will be transferred and unclassified starting from 2035, and in 75 years maybe our great-grandchildren will see those archives. This is the situation in Belarus. Well, nobody is immortal, even former presidents, even those presidents who are former chairs of collective farms. I hope that both in Belarus and Moldova the changes will become more radical, such as decommunization and opening of archives. In this sphere we have opened archives in 2010, before Ukraine did that. totalitarian communist regime in Moldova was researched yesterday at our workshop. We talked about this. I would like to accent several main ideas. How we succeeded in what are our successes in opening KGB archives and party archives, Communist Party archives. For example, we expected that the KGB archives will have much more documents about the Second World War, about collaborationists, who they were. When we opened KGB archives, we were disappointed. Then in the party's archives, we found this. They found about guerrilla movement, where we saw 1,000 cases of agents which logically should have been in the KGB archives. They were present in the Communist Party archives. I'd like to remind that very important documents we found in the Ministry of Internal Affairs archives about the hunger of 1946-1947 in Moldova. Before 2010, we knew about several cases of cannibalism. This is the hard indicator of hunger. And then in the MIA of the Soviet Union, we found 152 cases of cannibalism took place. One of them was in Pridnestrovye, all the rest were in the territory of Bessarabia, in particular in Izmail region, which is a part of Ukraine. So it is very interesting to look into those documents, and they are very important for the health of society. This is not just the past. This is, we opened in the KGB, we found the fund about the large terror. We didn't know about this fund. We didn't have access even about repressions, and my colleagues Igor Sharov and Igor Varta, they published the great terror victims' names. In Pridnestrovye, the situation is worse. This is the reservation in the full sense of this word. People knew about from this book. They knew that that grandfather was a deportee, and in 2010 they got to know that they were shot in Tiraspol. Grandfather and great grandfather, they were not deported, but they were shot. They got this information, but they said that we are afraid in Tiraspol. In Tiraspol 2 years ago, the security service was renamed into KGB. So the past and the present are connected in Pridnestrovye. So we, historians, journalists, we play a very important role in making our society more healthy. As one in UK historian was saying that history for society is like psychoanalysis for an individual. We can, as a society, become normal democratic society only because this is a psychoanalysis needed only after once again rethinking the history of our ancestors. We should free ourselves, we should clean ourselves. History is important. And Ukrainian archives, have you used them already? Yes, I have. Within one day I have managed to find out what you have and found some documents about 1940s in Bessarabia, in Ismail region, about the hunger. I would like to congratulate Andrei Kogut and Vladimir Petrovich for this brilliant work. I can't believe this, that I got to know within this visit to archive there are funds which we do not know that they are present in Chisinau. The agents structure. Ukraine is becoming a best practice model for opening archives, how to make open access to prevent hiding of information. It was a presidential decree. The president, for you to get to know, to understand that the president was a temporary official. It was an acting president. There was one speaker, one prime minister, one president. Liberal Party was allocated presidency, and he knew that his post was only for 1 year. His brother was a dissident, Dodi Mihai Gimpo is the president, and Dodi Gimpo is his brother who was a dissident, but we have not managed to legalize those changes. We sought to use Romanian model so that the president condemned the crimes of communist regime in the parliament, and on this basis to adopt legislative changes, but we have failed. The main thing which we have managed to do is to get access to archives. We have changed the textbooks. First, every week we have TV programs, so we are making good way. You are welcome. We will help you anytime. Azerbaijan, Rafik Ramazanov, I'd like to thank the organizers of this event. During 2 days, we learned the progress of Czechia, Poland, Ukraine. Ukraine used the model of Poland. This is very good. And here in Azerbaijan, we parted with communists in 1990s. Since 20 January 1990s, when Soviet army entered the city and occupied it, the Communist Party stopped to exist. It was only formal. Lenin's monuments were demolished. We do not have them. I'd like to say that KGB documents which existed in Soviet times and during independence of our country. This information is only partially accessible. Only agents and agents' details remain classified, and some other documents are state secret. Rehabilitation of political victims of political repressions, it is in consideration. In our prosecutor's office, we had a special department on rehabilitation of the repressed persons, former political prisoners, and those persons who addressed this department, and even those who didn't address the department. The court issued writs to rehabilitate those victims. In the period of the Red Terror, it was the black period for all Soviet republics, including Ukraine, Russia, Transcaucasus republics. This was intended extinction. It was intended killings of those people who are intelligent and conscious and who could jeopardize the interests of communist state. As of present date, we have the law on National Archive Fund and on rehabilitation of victims of political repressions, and the issues of rehabilitation. Relatives of the victims of these repressions, they are entitled to address prosecutor's office and security service to apply for documents of personal cases and the rehabilitation of their relatives, and also NGOs and legal entities and researchers. They are allowed to apply for information, and we have an expert council which consider this applications. The periods are for the maximum period 1 week and 2 weeks. If some check is then 1 month. So you have the filter established, which is the expert council. Direct access is given to relatives of former political prisoners, but before that, this victim should present his or her document that he is a relative of this victim. The expert council, we have it because those people could be alive who wrote reports on those victims. Our country is small. People know each other. Not everyone knows agents. We were witnessing today how two representatives of Ukrainian intellectuals, they denounced, they informed on each other. Our republic exists for 25 years. The example is social basis for adoption of this law. It is necessary, and the society should demand it. You and your colleagues have completed the mission impossible. They have conducted social surveys, and you made huge efforts, and you created the basis. In our country, we raised this issue several times, but when the power changed, those in power changed, then the process was suspended. I would like to thank those people who have achieved adoption of this law in Ukraine. This is a very good positive example. And I think that this is the service you serve to your people, for the truth. We are giving the floor to Irakli. I know that you have problems with this in Georgia. Your colleagues said that they want to reform the archive sphere. As concerns Georgia, every country has its own specific features, and although we exchange experience, we have the other situation. What differs in our country? KGB archives opening. The decision on this was adopted in 2004 and 2005 year, and after the August War, KGB archives are used largely in social life. Two factors contributed to the situation: that in December 1990, during the civil war in Tbilisi, the KGB building set on fire, and the documents disappeared, and before that some documents were transported to Smolensk, and after that in Georgia there is a formula. If archives do not want to give something, the formula is something was transported to Russia, or it just combusted during fire. When archive department was restructured in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, they started to open access to the rest of documents, to the residuals of documents. At the same time, historians and civilians could not find individuals who can consult, who can participate, who can create alternative agenda, how to do that. After 2005 until 2010, 2011, when the first independent initiative started, including our NGO, archives have been working for 5 years. We have had access, but unfortunately there was no interest on the side of society. Society is not interested. Usually most historians are foreigners. and the local demand is very low from historians. The other problem is that the archive of the former KGB is a very big archive of documents, is a party archive. This is under the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Academy of the Internal Affairs, and all staff of this institution. They are not historians. They are police officers. So we didn't experience any cases when they refused giving documents which are available on their web pages, but proceeding from the practices of independent researchers, we can say that not everything is transparent, and also some institutional hierarchy in internal affairs body also contributes to complicating the situation, and also the price, because the state thinks that when historian works in archives and make copies, he should pay very big money, 1.5 euro per each page. So to write just one small article, you need to pay quite a big sum of money. The state has no idea, and the society doesn't have idea. There is an area of document illustrating history. We have the same, that all these documents, they are available in various archives, and there is no understanding that this is a total area of documents, and we need a new law to integrate this information. And also some private information should be classified. We do not have discussion on this issue. There was an attempt that to, in the scope of our round table, to have a discussion and to stimulate this process, to encourage this process. But now we try to raise this issue again. After Lithuania, Estonia, Georgia was next to open access to KGB archives, and now our country is lagging behind. So the last wish is Georgia started to become interested for the last year. Moldova and Georgia can use our best practices. We are ready to help. Thank you. In 1 minute we will have the next briefing.